Traditional quilt making requires planning. Cutting specific sizes of strips or blocks results in a most definite design. My guest during this two-part series on Bargello Quilts with a Twist plans a block, chooses color and value, yet the quilt design may easily vary by twisting the block orientation. I'd like you to welcome back Maggie Ball, who has an ingenious way of arranging blocks into almost unlimited designs. Maggie, good to have you back.
Thank you, Nancy. This Bargello block is very versatile, and I think our viewers will be excited to experiment with all the different ways they can arrange the block to generate new and exciting patterns. In this program, I'd like to share with you how to make 24 identical blue and white blocks to create a really classic-looking quilt.
Bargello Quilts with a Twist, that's what's coming up next on Sewing with Nancy.
Sewing with Nancy, TV's longest-airing sewing and quilting program with Nancy Zieman, is made possible by Baby Lock, a complete line of sewing, quilting, and embroidery machines and sergers. Baby Lock, for the love of sewing. Madeira, specializing in embroidery, quilting, and special effect threads, because creativity is never black and white. Koala Studios, fine sewing furniture custom built in America. Clover, makers of sewing, knitting, quilting, and embroidery products for over 25 years. Experience the Clover difference. And amazing designs and Class A needles.
Traditional Bargello quilting generally has between 8 and 20 strips of fabric sewn together, cut into segments and offset to make a design. And Maggie, you've simplified it, but you'll soon see sewing 4 sections together.
Yes, I've used the same proportions as in the traditional Bargello technique, but instead we're creating a block, and you only have to sew 4 sets of strips, of 4 strips each, which simplifies it greatly, because a lot of quilters are intimidated by sewing so many strips together, keeping all those seam lines parallel and cutting. So this really is much simpler, only to sew 4 strips at a time. So, and yes, creating a very versatile block that you can make many different patterns with.
Now, you may think there's a lot of piecing going on here. We'll show you how to break it down very simplified. And the Delft quilt that we have in the traditional blue and white design, much like a plate, features this one block twisted and the orientation in different places so that you have quite an interesting variation. And later on in the program, we'll show you ways of laying this out to get a different look with one block. But let's first talk about fabric.
In this particular quilt, we've gone with a classic blue and white look. But you'll notice that we've got a good range of values here. So we're going all the way from the white through to very dark blue. And it's important, very important, to have that range of values. Otherwise, the design just doesn't show up. If you have all the same value, you know, 2 very close together, you just don't see the patterns in the same way. And we've also tried to pick a variety of prints, so different scales and looks to the prints on the fabric.
When I first started quilting, I tended to always have mediums, and maybe no one else has done this, but then my piecing just kind of faded. It was fruitless in doing this. So adding the high contrast, the different scale and sizes is so important. And you need to be 4 and 7 colors.
It makes a tremendous difference, yes. And what we do, the first step is to create a diagram of what we're going to do in the block. So we start off with a blank diagram and we work out where the fabrics are going to be placed on this. And you always place the fabrics so that they are a mirror image around the diagonal. And basically the block is made from these 4 sets of strips, A, B, C, and D. And this A1 square is the large 3-inch square, and we go right down to a small square in the corner for the D segment, and then these spaces are filled in with rectangles.
And what you stated is that from that diagonal line, a mirror image on either side of the diagonal line is the same fabric.
Yes.
And that's what makes the motion and the flow of the design work.
Yes, and then when you put the blocks together, you can see how the lines of color continue through, and so you get beautiful secondary patterns developing. So the first step then is to color in this, annotate it in some way. You can stick little slips of fabric on there. You can just write little pencil labels, as long as you understand where your fabrics are going to go.
And you get a visual of what you're going to have.
And then from that, we create a cutting plan. So we're just transferring this information from the diagram onto a cutting plan. And this enables us to go through each fabric in turn and itemize the strips that need to be cut for that fabric. And this diagram has the size, the cutting size on there already. So we're just transferring the information from here to here so that when we come to cut our fabric, we have a list of the strips required for each fabric.
Speaking of which, we just happen to have these strips cut into the A, B, C, and D sets and placed on some paper. And you're going to cut the crosswise strips. Here's the A set. We have a slightly different fabric combination. Fabric always has little whiskers. We had to get that whisker out of the way. But then you have the arrangement, as you can see.
And it's very important that as you cut the fabric, you put the strips down on these labeled pieces of paper. It's very easy to get your strips confused. So as you cut the A1 piece, it's going to go down on the A set. And then this is the A2 piece. For the same fabric, you've got the B1 piece. So as you cut the B piece, you put it on the B set. And that way, all your fabrics are organized, and it is important to stay well organized.
Absolutely. So now we're organized, and you might guess the next step is to sew the pieces together. Traditional quilting seams are used to put together the strip sets using a quilting needle, all-purpose quilting thread or sewing thread, and a 1/4 of an inch pressing foot. And use thread, of course, that will match your fabric. I just have a contrast here to show you. And then your strips are all placed on pieces of paper marked A, B, C, and D. And Maggie has a certain sequence to follow to keep everything organized. You can tell she's extremely organized. And 1, 2, 3, 4 of the strips, 2 is always placed on top of 1, and 4 is always placed on top of 3. After the seams of these 2 sets have been sewn, then of course the middle seam will be adjoined. And Maggie, you have a real sequence to show us about this, or process.
Yes, to help you keep organized, you just need to remember to put the larger of the 2 strips underneath. So here I already have A1 and A2 sewn together. A1 is the larger of the 2 strips, so that went on the bottom, then the A2 on top, and then I just stitched that together. Now I'm going to sew A3 and A4 together. So the larger is A3, that goes on the underneath. We put A4 on top, and then I will just stitch that. Now I like to start with this little folded strip of fabric in the machine. That way I can stitch from end to end, and that's particularly critical once we get onto the pieced sections, these segments for the block. So we just sew right off the end of this strip, and here we go. And now Nancy's going to show you how to press the seams.
Now you may think pressing is just pressing on a quilting to one side, but Maggie, you recommend that we have the seams pressed open.
Yes, and that is because we can't predict ahead of time exactly how we're going to arrange the blocks. And as you'll see, there are many different ways to put the blocks together. And if we could predict ahead of time, we'd know which way to press the seams. But because we haven't decided yet how to do that, we're going to press all the seams open. That way we don't have bulky seams when we join blocks in any orientation.
And you can see that after pressing the seam flat, I slightly raise the fabric so that the tip of the iron guides along the seam, eliminating the issue that I often have of pressing the seam, getting a crease in the area. This gives it, allows it to be nice and flat. Now I have a different strip set combination here, but regardless of the color of the fabrics you're putting together, this 2-step process, flat and open, is your next step.
And it's much easier to iron just from a pair of strips instead of sewing all 4 and then trying to press all those 3 seams. So we sew in 2 pairs, then join the 2 pairs together.
And I have on my board the 4 strip sets that have been stitched together. And then Maggie, we have, this is strip A, strip set A, and
Yes.
then you're going to cut it into segments.
And the A is the widest, so we're going to cut that 3.5 inches,
And here's the B combination, and you're cutting that.
2.5 inches,
Here's C,
which will be cut 1 3/4,
and then last but not least, the smallest one.
1 1/4.
And then Maggie will show you how to sew the seams together. Pinning is the crucial part to this.
I like to pin these intersections so that they come out really crisp and fresh. And so what I do is I put the pins in at perpendicular to the seam. So we're going to just line up these seams. We have open seams here. We'll just line them up, put the pin in, and I've already pinned these together.
And then the sewing is just traditional sewing, using again that little spacer cloth, and you'd stitch all 4 segments together. And here's the block with all 4 seams, but then one final step, and that's to press. Press them flat, but Maggie, you recommend pressing over a sleeve roll.
Yes, it helps a little having that curved surface. And once again, you press the pairs and then join the pairs together. So Nancy's just opening that final seam there.
And here's our block, and now we'll show you the orientation or the arrangements. Maggie and I just finished showing you the basic principles of piecing together a Bargello block. And as you can see, the coloration on both sides of the diagonal is the mirror image. And now, Maggie, after making 24 of these blocks, you have lots of creative options for layout.
This is the fun part, and quilters who make these blocks are really excited at this stage to be able to experiment with different layouts. And if we just look at these 4 blocks, you know, we can arrange it so that the big squares come together in the middle, or we can just turn around a couple of them. And as you can see, you get this kind of the white outlining a sort of butterfly shape.
And then we can just give it another turn. Bargello quilts with a twist, and obviously another look.
And here all these small D4 squares come together in the center. And what we're going to do on today's project is turn these on point, which gives it a totally different look.
So twist them 45 degrees. And this is, a little extra threads here, this is the layout that you'll see behind us. Here in the center, these 4 blocks merge together, and here are the block, here's the block configuration or orientation. And now we can lay out another design as it radiates out from the center.
So you can build up these blocks actually in any way you like, and just rearrange to adjust the pattern, play around with it, and get creative.
You'll have to check my work, Megan. Is that correct?
I think so. I
Okay.
think that's like the one behind us. But
All right.
you can have fun and create something different if you like.
Okay, I'll take that as a challenge.
So when we put our blocks on point, we end up with these triangles at the side. So we have to put in setting triangles on the sides. We have these triangles that go in, and then also on the corners we have larger triangles to fill in the corner space. So if you look at the quilt behind us here, you can see where these triangles are, the smaller triangles going on the sides, and then a large triangle in the corner. And the way that we piece together this quilt is that we piece in diagonal rows. So when you have a squarely set quilt, you would piece across the rows. In this case, we've turned the blocks on point, and we still want to do all our stitching in straight lines. We don't want to inset any blocks. And so we're going to sew these in straight lines like this. We get diagonal rows of blocks.
And we just happen to have some diagonal rows sewn together.
So here we've got 2 blocks that go up in the corner with their triangles attached. And then the next row will have 4 blocks. We just get this the right way around here.
Alrighty. And you can see that in some instances, some of the blocks have to join exactly at the seam allowances.
Yes, this is a mirror image on either side, and so these seams do want to be exact. So we're going to pin in the same way that we pinned those pieces of the segments. Put your pins in perpendicular and you can get a really nice sharp seams. Right here, you can see the seams don't need to match because the blocks are rotated around. And then when you join these, you can either press the seams open or you can press this row this way and this row this way so that the seams would butt nicely.
So we're still working all with straight seam allowances. We're not working with corners, no pivoting, but the seams are on a diagonal, or the strips are cut on the diagonal, but relatively fast to put together, and so many design options. And soon you will see this basic block that Maggie has created in different fabric configurations and what versatility this Bargello twist quilt design will have. You just saw one of Maggie's quilts set on point that we worked on during the second program of our series, and now we have a showcase of marvelous combinations. And Maggie, your quilt obviously always also set on point.
This one is set on point too, and this time you'll see that the 4 big squares come together in the center, and what I've done is I've cut particular motifs here to showcase this so that when you get one big square you get a really nice pattern developing. So here's the block, but then you can see I've got 4 together in the center.
Beautiful color combinations. I'm just impressed with the color that you've put together, a lot of values, and wow, this one really is a change of scene.
And this one is the Trip Around the World setting, so it's an on-point look. And we have 36 blocks squarely set here. And we've just got 2 different block types. They're actually the same except for this large square. So in 18 of the blocks we have the orange batik, and in 18 of the blocks we have the dark batik, and they alternate. And in this particular quilt, we also extended out the border. So I wanted to resolve the pattern here and take this dark blue all the way out to the edge. And so this is the border strip, and you can see how I've pieced a section in the border to extend that pattern out.
Now, you can also combine blocks. This is not one block orientation, one block configuration, but you can see the colorations. Whoa!
Well, this is like a traditional log cabin straight furrows setting. And there are 2 block types here. So we have the brown block. You can see this dark brown arc. And then we have one that is gold with the orange and gold. And then what I did in this case was that these large A1 squares, I cut them separately so I could play around. And so I have a diagonal line of gold here, and some of them are on the brown blocks, some of them are on the gold blocks.
Nice.
Here you can see the diagonal of blue. So you can really play around with this. The other nice thing on this quilt is you'll see in the border how we've used some of those extra strip sets that you have left over.
Sure.
When you make your blocks, you end up with leftover pieces. So that's a way that you can use those in the border of the quilt.
Now for some drama. We have the same setting, but different fabrics.
And this is a much more contemporary look. And so it's also that, that straight furrows setting, but here we've got some blocks that have this yellow arc in, and we have some blocks that have the red arc in. And once again, I cut these A1 squares separately, and so I could mix up the colors. Yeah.
Our last quilt is a showstopper, and it has many quilts many blocks combined.
We have 9 different blocks in there, so it's exciting to put all those things together.
And all of these are detailed in the book that accompanies today's program. Maggie, delightful work. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Nancy.
And I know you'll enjoy this technique. You may learn new sewing techniques on television, through a book, from a friend, or through a local chapter of the American Sewing Guild. There are over 137 chapters with 1,000 neighborhood groups in the United States that offer basic to creative information. The Madison, Wisconsin Guild searched out a local artist to teach the basics of dyeing with natural dyes to their local or group, and Laurel Maple, the vice president of the chapter, is with us today to share this fascinating technique and the learning power of the American Sewing Guild. Laurel, thanks for being with us.
Well, thanks for having me. This is truly a public television project. While viewing a local gardening show, a local textile artist, Larry Schmidt, was showing dyeing with no pot dyeing techniques. And I thought this was something that we could take back to our guild for everyone to enjoy. So I contacted Larry, and he gave us a hands-on demonstration in his garage one night. We came back and we ran with it.
And the technique that you applied to was scarves.
That's correct. These
Wow,
are
beautiful.
China silk scarves. We chose that medium because we like the feel of it with the
they're
finished
lovely.
product.
And beautiful, subtle colors.
Correct. We started, this was about the first dyeing lesson that we did, and there are 5 very basic steps in preparing the scarves with the plant material and curing the scarves, and then heat setting them scarves, rinsing them and heat setting them again.
We have some illustrations or photos to show you the process. And Laurel, this first one is just laying out the natural organic material.
Correct. As you view that, you can see a variety of plant material and blooms. There are also berries, dark-colored berries in there. And as we went through the process, we discovered that using the natural plant materials and then pounding them into the silk with ball peen hammers gave us a much more vivid, bright color.
And then you do some twisting of including the organic material with the silk scarf.
That's correct. You need to add a mordant, which kind of transfers the color into the silk, combined with an acid liquid. And we wrap or twist the scarves together, wrap them with twine. They go into a reclosable zip-type bag, and they cure for anywhere from 2 weeks to 2.5 days.
Now the Morton, I wasn't always familiar with that term, so that's like a copper or aluminum or metal.
That's correct. Pure copper, pure steel, not galvanized, or aluminum deodorant.
Spray the fabric.
Spray the fabric first and then lay that down, pound in the materials, and cure it.
Cure it with a little vinegar or wine.
Wine or fruit juice
Sure.
was used as well.
Now, I'm holding these beautiful scarves, and Laurel has added tags to the bottom of them. This one was made with carrots and black beans right here.
Right. This particular turquoise scarf was made with daylilies and coffee beans.
Who would have ever thought? And
Right.
let's look at this one. If I looked at it earlier, I think it was coffee. No, let's see. Here we go. We have blueberries and coffee.
Right.
Now, lovely subtle colors, but let's show you some. I have on the table on the side some more brilliant colors. Yummy.
Yeah, aren't they? They would go with every wardrobe. And these colors were produced by using pounded fruit and berries and blooms, as well as sometimes microwaved to kind of break the cells down, and then they were pounded in, and also cured for a much fewer amount of days.
This little note says 2.5 days, turmeric, basil, blueberries, and then you dry them. After you get them out of the bag, you kind of brush off all the organic material.
Right. They dry until they're real dry, pressed with a very hot iron, rinsed, and then pressed again wet.
Oh, scrumptious colors. And we have one more grouping to show you, actually more, but this is the ones we've chosen. You've actually added some paint sticks to this area.
That's correct. These were scarves that the colors were so subdued that we wanted to add a bit of pop to them. Some of them were dyed twice, actually.
Oh,
you can do
beautiful.
that. So we used oil paint sticks over rubbing blocks and then sealed those as well with heat. And so it adds a little different dimension to perhaps just the
Great.
color.
Well, Laurel, thank you for sharing this with us and what fascinating things you learned through your guild and you passed along to your members. Appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you.
And if you'd like to find out more information about this, you can go to the sewingwithnancy.com website. Under Nancy's Corner in the 2400 series, you'll find information about today's program, about the American Sewing Guild and the Madison Sewing Guild, so you can see some of these photos step by step so that you too can practice. Remember, you can learn a lot through the American Sewing Guild. Well, thanks for joining us. Special thanks to Maggie Ball being our guest during this two-part series on Bargello Quilts with a Twist. Bye for now.
Maggie Ball has written a fully illustrated book entitled Bargello Quilts with a Twist that serves as the reference for this two-part series. It's $18.99 plus shipping and handling. To order the book, call 800-336-8373 or visit our website at sewingwithnancy.com/2413. Order item number Z1629 Bargello Quilts with a Twist. Credit card orders only. To pay by check or money order, call the number on the screen for details. Visit Nancy's website at sewingwithnancy.com for more information on this program. Sewing with Nancy, TV's longest-airing sewing and quilting program with Nancy Zieman, has been brought to you by Baby Lock, Madeira Threads, Koala Studios, Clover, Amazing Designs, and Classe Needles. Closed captioning funding provided by Rowenta. Sewing with Nancy is a co-production of Nancy Zieman Productions and Wisconsin Public Television.